Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 162 of my podcast for January 17th, 2013. I have some returning guests today. They are Patrick Vlaskovits and Brant Cooper. They were on episode 99 talking about their previous book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development. You can find that at leanblog.org/99. Today we're going to be talking about their new book. It's actually coming out in February. It's called The Lean Entrepreneur: How Visionaries Create Products, Innovate with New Ventures, and Disrupt Markets. So you can find links to pre-order the book. You can go to leanentrepreneur.co, or you can go to leanblog.org/162, and I'll have links for that. Their book will also be available on Amazon.com and in the Kindle format and all the usual places when it comes out in February. So for all past episodes, including lots of discussions on lean startups with Eric Ries, lean IT with Steve Bell, the previous episode, you can get all of these by going to leanpodcast.org, and you can also find a lot of great content on lean healthcare, lean leadership, discussion with lots of other lean authors. So I hope you'll come back and listen more. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
So Patrick, you've been on the show before, but if you can just kind of give a quick background for listeners who maybe didn't hear that earlier episode.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur, an author, and a consultant. Brant and I wrote The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development back in 2010. We self-published that book. It's done really, really well. And now we're coming out with our traditionally published book called The Lean Entrepreneur, launching February 26th, 2013.
Yeah, and Brant, if you can introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. So I did the startup thing in the late 90s and in the 2000s, had some successes and some failures, and got into looking at how we can build startups better. And that actually led us towards lean. And so along with some other thinkers, Steve Blank and Eric Ries, we're trying to apply some of these lean methodologies to endeavors where there's a lot of uncertainty, i.e. Startups.
Right. And so, Brant, if you talk about, kind of generally before we delve into some of the things in the book, lean entrepreneurship, how do you define or summarize what lean entrepreneurship is, compared to regular, non-lean, old-fashioned entrepreneurship?
Right. So I think what the reason why we use the word lean is because what we want to do is eliminate waste. And so the old school methodology of creating startups, but even beyond startups, doing more disruptive innovation inside of large organizations as well. The old school method is sort of to believe what you think between your ears and execute on that. And what that leads to is actually a lot of waste. It leads to people building products, adding features, going down these paths that where there's nothing validated. And it's sort of like these are faith-based endeavors. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to do with lean and lean entrepreneurs is say, listen, here are some methodologies that you can do to validate some of these things, and so you're not wasting time, money, and effort into endeavors that are doomed to fail.
Yeah, and the things that make me think of lean, or paraphrasing what you said, being customer focused. Make sure you're building things or adding new features that customers really actually want and can use and find value in. Not wasting the time of people who might work on something based on a brilliant idea. So I'm curious if one of you can talk a little bit. In the book, you share a quote from Mark Cuban, who talks about, following your passion is generally really bad advice. Can you talk about that, how that ties in with the notions in your book?
Well, so I think that if I read it correctly, I think what Mark is really saying is that what you sort of naturally follow what you're inclined to do and what you're an expert about. And so if you're, I think he sort of objects to the term passionate because people might be passionate about something that they're no good at. I'm not sure that that's actually true. I think that people that are self-aware and that are, they're doing what they want to do, it's because those things have come together. And so I think, though, that what we're trying to get beyond again is this belief that if you just execute hard enough, your dreams will come true. And there's a recent TechCrunch blog post about you have to have conviction, and it's the people with conviction that do big innovation. And I think that quote is sort of getting to that. That isn't true, right? Just because you have passion about something or you're in love with an idea, it doesn't, in an external objective reality, that doesn't mean that those ideas are good or that they will work. And so what is it that we talk about in the book, this concept of a shadow force, and Patrick's actually got a couple of pretty good examples of that. And basically, you might sell shoes online like Zappos. And so people look at your business and go, yeah, they're great at selling shoes online. But really their shadow force is customer service. And it's what drives their business. And it's what keeps them ahead of the competition. And so the driving force, what makes you get up every day and that what you're great at doing and this is, I think, what you do become passionate about it. But I think Mark is actually trying to have you look at it a little bit different way to figure out what can be your shadow force for your organization.
And it seems like, passion's an important thing, but it shouldn't be the only thing. If you're really passionate about something that's just not going to be a very good business, why spend a lot of time on that perhaps? And, Patrick, maybe if you can talk a little bit about, this notion of, how do you go and find out if an idea is even viable? You've got an idea for a technology or a service you want to provide or software that you have. How do you go about that? And why is it sometimes people say that it's better to fail fast? What's important about that?
Sure. So, one of the things we talk about in the book is you can actually commit yourself to a number of sort of variables in this equation. So, for example, if there's a audience or segment that you're committed to serving in some manner, you can actually commit yourself to them and then figure out what their problems are, what a potential solution would look like, what a potential product would look like. But you can also choose any one of those as well. So let's say you decided, I want to build XYZ product. I'm really passionate about this product. I really want to see it materialize in this world. Then you can sort of keep that constant and iterate on your segment and your channels and your technology. And the point is, we don't actually suggest what we think is the best or optimal way to do it. We've seen it work many, many different ways. But the point being is that you can commit yourself to one of these variables in sort of this equation and then go see where the other variables fit. Because ultimately, if the other variables don't align, so if you're building a product and you're trying to reach a certain segment via a channel that they're not on, well, then you're going to fail. So in terms of viability, the sooner you actually start testing how viable your idea is, the better. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing something really disruptive, we have an innovation spectrum, and on the left side of the innovation spectrum, we talk about sustaining innovation, which is generally speaking incremental performance metrics. And the other side, we talk about disruptive innovation. And that's, when you see these black swan type effects happen. And if you're doing something on the disruptive side or more to the disruptive side, you're much, much more subject to uncertainty and deep uncertainty and not risk. And they're fundamentally two different things. And if you can start building what we call high hurdle experiments and viability experiments around your ideas, the sooner you can start actually validated learning, which is the unit of progress in the lean startup.
Wait, so expand on the idea of uncertainty versus risk. I think that's an interesting comparison. How would you, if you can elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So what we do is we have this, like as I mentioned earlier, we talk about the innovation spectrum, and we talk about sustaining innovation on the left side and disruptive on the right side. And it is a spectrum, and it is shades of gray and all that. The idea being, if you're doing something sustaining, you already have pretty good historical knowledge about what works. You know who your customers are, you know the value prop, you know the pricing, you know what sort of channels, and you can have meaningful conversations with them about what they'd like to see next. So whether let's say you're selling some widget and you go to your customer and you say, hey, next year we're going to make the widget twice as fast and twice as cheap. Is this something you'd be interested in? And they'll say, yeah, that'd be great because we already use it and we bought 25 last year. We'll probably buy 35 this year because we're expanding. And you can actually have a very high fidelity conversation, and there's not a lot of uncertainty. There's certainly risk. Maybe their business, maybe they go out of business, or maybe there's other factors. There's always, you can't de-risk something to zero, but there's sort of manageable risk, and historical trends make sense there, and traditional business methods make sense there. You can do a reasonable return on investment calculation. However, on the truly disruptive side, those things fall apart where you're in deep uncertainty, and this is the land of black swans, if you subscribe to Nassim Taleb's point of view on things. And there, it's really hard to have a meaningful conversation about what is, because both you and your potential customers lack context. So there, you really have to look at behavior, and you don't necessarily take what your customer says. You don't necessarily take them at their word. And in uncertainty, all sorts of interesting things happen, right? And that's what you're really trying to de-risk as best as possible, and then maximize your exposure to these positive black swan effects. And you saw this, for example, when the iPhone came out, the Model T, any major product, the iPad, any product you see that sort of takes over the world very quick is one of these that rides these positive black swan waves.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious if one of you guys or both of you can address the idea of disruptive innovation, because I think it's really fascinating how this is part of the lean startup approach, or how it's important in entrepreneurship. Because I think lean, I think sometimes gets an unfair rap in manufacturing or even in healthcare, that lean is good for incremental tweaking of a process, and I don't think that I think that's a somewhat unfair characterization. So I think it's great to see lean principles that we would all recognize being applied to very innovative products and innovative settings. So if you guys can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I think it gets right back to sort of the myth of the visionary. So I think that there's a whole culture that's built up around you have to imagine the future and imagine this product that's going to be in the future, and again have conviction about this vision, and sit down and execute on that vision, and sometimes you'll most likely you'll fail, but there'll be some winners in there, and the smart VCs know how to pick the winners. And inside of large organizations, this happens too, where senior managers, they get paid a lot of money, so they must be able to predict the future, and they can choose which internal innovation endeavors are most likely to be the big winners. Well, so this is all, it's really mythology. And so this gets back to what Patrick was saying, those are all uncertain. The disruptive side of the spectrum, the market is not only unknown, it's unknowable, it's unpredictable. And so where lean sort of morphs into lean startup, or lean startup is really sort of the subset of lean. Lean startup was originally thought of around the concept of how do you tackle this uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so what is wasteful when you're attacking uncertainty? Well, what's wasteful is doing things that don't eliminate the uncertainty. So Eric Ries in the Lean Startup book talks about validated learning as being the measure of reducing this uncertainty. And so your efforts are wasteful if you're actually not learning about what the market is and what the product actually should be, and whether the market is tied to this product idea that you have. And so you can do these things in a lean fashion if you measure waste based upon whether you're learning or not. So I think it's as you learn, you then hopefully transition part of your team into execution mode, where then you are using traditional lean practices, and you've established what your value stream is, for example, and then you're using your flow and pull from market demand to organize your activities. But fundamentally, if you actually don't know what your market is and you don't know your product, then you actually don't know your value stream. All of the elements around your activities are all hypotheses. And so the lean startup angle to this is that you need to discover all of that.
Mm-hmm. And talk a little more about value streams, because it's something you write about in the book. People might think of the value stream for building a car or an iPad, or the value stream of a patient going through the emergency department and getting treated. What types of value streams are important to the creation and life cycle of a startup?
Well, so on the startup side, there's all sorts of tools out there that help you document what your assumptions are. So what we've done is, again, sort of in lean fashion, is if you imagine that your product is completely built and that you have a market and you have passionate customers, now you know what your value stream is. And we believe fundamentally that it's important to include marketing and sales and other business operations in that value stream, because if you produce a product very efficiently that the market has never heard of, you actually have not created value for your customers. So if you include all of the marketing and the sales and the manufacturing, the product development in your value stream, once the product's out there and you have passionate customers, you can look and see what that value stream is. Again, if you look at the uncertainty where you don't know what those things actually are, you believe in your head that you know, but now you actually are going to work using lean startup principles to validate those assumptions, then what we have is a way to hypothesize what will construct your value stream. And so the method that we use in the book is basically starting from that passionate customer, working backwards to that customer being first aware, and what are all of the business activities, both value add activities as well as some non-value add probably that are necessary to get the product out to market. But you create a set of hypotheses around this value stream, and then that gives you what you can go and test using the methods we describe in the book around interacting with your customers in a particular way. What metrics do you want to focus on that make your actions actionable? What is actually going to move the business forward? And what sort of experiments can you run, again, to validate these different hypotheses of what your value stream is going to look like once you're successful?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like one of the familiar themes there, with the value stream, is that you're breaking down barriers between silos of software development and marketing, and trying to get better creation around that, better collaboration in that flow of creating a customer, maintaining a new customer. Is that right?
Right. I mean, I think that in today's world, the traditional business organizations around departments tend to work too slow. So we've done a number of workshops with enterprise companies, and you hear this story over and over where, hey, we get experimentation. We actually have a group here in our company that's in charge of running experiments, and the problem is that it takes 4 or 5 months to run one experiment, and that experiment is likely going to fail. And so these people that are seeking to do this innovation, this more disruptive innovation inside of the organization, they give up. It takes 4 or 5 months to do one experiment. The experiment's likely to fail, and they're, okay, I'm just going to go back to my existing job. Mm-hmm. So that's a big problem. The other part of it is that once you have silos like that, the number of people that are actually in close contact with the customer so that they can understand their needs deeply becomes fewer and fewer. And really, we need the engineers, we need the designers, we need product managers and salespeople and marketing people to be close to the customer, to understand what those needs are and what is the most efficient way to deliver those needs. And that's what a lean organization looks like on the more disruptive side of the innovation spectrum.
Now, when we talk about evaluating experiments, and you talk about validated learning. One of the things I thought was really interesting in the book was the phrase, data is used to inform decisions, not make decisions. That's a really interesting point if you can talk about that.
It's actually it is an interesting point. It's one of those things, you see this a lot in the tech startup world. Everyone's really excited about data, and we're all data driven, and et cetera, et cetera. But data is not, most of the time, Brant and I could look at the same data set and come to radically different conclusions about what to do next, right? Sort of based on our experiences, how we interpret the data, and what we think is possible given our resources. So this idea that data somehow has this objective truth that doesn't need to be interpreted or
right.
talked about is completely false. And anyone who's done any series of tough decision making will quickly concur, right? Yes, data, of course, it's good, but it doesn't make decisions for you,
right?
And so Brant and I, even with this book, when we're working on how to promote the book, how to do this, we often have discussions about I think this, Brant thinks this, and it doesn't mean that we're wrong or right. We interpret it differently. We bring different experiences, different context. But at least what's powerful is that at least we have a common ground to talk about things, and it helps resolve that. I'm the visionary. You should do what I say, right? And that to me is when I run into startups or organizations that have that problem. It's not a good problem to have. It's an ugly problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That data doesn't create robotic, automatic decisions. I mean, I think sometimes people think, well, if there's this automatic decision, it either reduces risk or somehow minimizes the risk of being wrong. And I think people are afraid of that until they really kind of get into the idea that we run experiments, we have hypotheses, we go through the what do you call it, the PDCA, PDSA improvement cycle. We're going to be wrong. Get over it. We're going to be okay. And
not only that, Mark. It's also the one unfortunate thing we've seen quite a bit of is when people run one so-called experiment and assume that their hypotheses or their are firmly validated, when really you should be running multiple type experiments to really suss out what are the causal effects in any of these experiments. And so it's very rare where if Brant and I run an experiment where we say we just do it one time and then we go high five, it's validated, or no, it's not, right? It's as anyone again who's done any sort of serious sequential decision making, it's impossible to do anything like that. You really have to run sort of multiple experiments. You have to at least take some time. Sometimes you get them right, sometimes you get them wrong, and it's just not a run and gun type approach. If you want to get deep understanding,
you're hoping an experiment informs the next experiment, right? And so you're honing in on what the right answer is. So like a real quick example would be, we talk about in the book quite a bit about how do you measure engagement? Well, you have a hypothesis, what a user is going to do over some time period that indicates that they're engaged with your product. And you measure that. And if it doesn't reach your hypothesis figures, then you have a couple of decisions to make. Well, one, the hypothesis could be wrong. Maybe engagement is they're going to upload and share a video 2 times a week instead of 3 times a week. Or it could be that there's something wrong with your product. So the data is telling you what you need to go and look at deeper, what's another experiment that you can run, but it actually doesn't tell you how to improve engagement.
Well, Patrick and Brant, I think we're going to have to wrap up here. There's certainly a lot we could dig into. Looking at the book, there's a lot of great stuff, lots of case studies, lots of examples, very practical stuff. It's a great looking book. I'm not going to judge a book by its illustrations, but I think it's a book people will enjoy reading and enjoy looking at. So I talk about ways people can find out more about the book. It's available for pre-order now. If you can share that
Sure.
with the listeners.
So we'd love for people interested to come by leanentrepreneur.co. So once again, leanentrepreneur.co, not .com. Come by, take a look. We've got a video about Brant and myself. We talk about what the book is, what the book contains. We're also running sort of a sweepstakes where if readers pre-order from us, they have a chance to win some pretty neat prizes. One of those include dinner with our friend Dave McClure, hosting packages from Rackspace, a golden ticket to all the GrowConf events this year. I think we're giving away 50 Lean Entrepreneur t-shirts designed by Fake Grimlock. So we have a bunch of neat prizes. We'd love to have people come by and pre-order and check it out. Spread the word. We're also going to be posting up all the illustrations from the book. They're actually Creative Commons, so people can take them, remix them, use them in presentations, use them on their websites. We hope to see a lot of creativity there. We'll be doing that hopefully this week. If anyone has any questions, please email Brant or myself at hello@leanentrepreneur.co. Once again, hello@leanentrepreneur.co. And we look forward to making this thing a bestseller.
Yeah, well, thank you, Patrick and Brant, for coming back on the podcast, talking about the book, and hopefully we can do this again. Good luck with the launch of the book.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.